The United States is approaching a new pandemic trend. The hospitalization of children is soaring to a record high. Last week, over 600 children were admitted to hospitals with COVID-19 each day. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, last week's numbers are more than double the average of the week before. Cases among children have also risen to record levels. Data suggests that over 300,000 new COVID cases were detected in children during the last week of December, which is up by 64% from the week before. Experts and officials believe that these two trends are likely linked. The rise in hospitalizations is the unfortunate outcome of more children contracting the virus. And there are several drivers behind soaring paediatric cases. Early data suggests that the Omicron variant could be up to 3 times more infectious than Delta, and children are the least vaccinated group in the US. Children under 5 years of age are not eligible for vaccination at all, and teens aged between 12 and 15 only just became eligible for booster shots in America. For more on this story, we're joined by our correspondent Susan Tarani, live from New York City. Susan, what's the situation in New York at the moment, as it has been the epicenter of COVID outbreaks lately?
It has. Good morning to you from New York City, a very snowy New York. It's the first big snowstorm of the season, and we're getting by pretty well so far. We have about 6 inches of snow here in New York City. Just a little weather update for you. We're a little excited about that, but regarding COVID, yes, it has been the epicenter, and we are seeing right now, according to the latest data in New York City, 1 in 3 New Yorkers have COVID right now at this point, and currently 11,000 people are hospitalized, the highest total since the peak of the pandemic, which was in 2020. In New York, 130 people died due to COVID. That's all across New York State, and 62 of them were in New York City. So that's a pretty high number, again, compared to the peak back in 2020. It's the largest number since mass vaccinations started, and what we're seeing right now is about 22 to 23% of New Yorkers, again, across the state have COVID. Of course, we don't know if that's the Delta variant or the Omicron variant. What's very interesting is Dr. Anthony Fauci recently said in an interview that we have to stop perhaps putting an emphasis on the number of infections and focus on the number of hospitalizations. And the reason for that is because he's hoping that because the Omicron variant is milder, and more people are getting it and not going to the hospital, focusing on the more severe cases might be a better denominator in determining how to combat COVID in this winter surge.
And Susan, experts were predicting the flattening of the curve from really the second week of January. Do you see that flattening beginning to happen?
Yeah, right. I did look into that as well, and I think one of the reasons that they were talking about that was because the burden of COVID and the fattening of it and the future of the burden of COVID really relies heavily on whether or not the highly transmissible variant of Omicron, again, is able to evade the pre-existing immunity that's been causing in so many individuals getting the Omicron variant. And I think that's one of the optimistic aspects of this variant, because it has a sort of a flu-like symptoms in so many people. It does create those antibodies, and it would perhaps prevent future outbreaks. But then there are those who say that it's too soon to tell on the one hand, and on the other hand, you know, again, it goes back to the fact that it depends on how we define whether or not the curve is being flattened. Are we going to focus on hospitalizations, or are we going to focus on infections? And that's perhaps something that we're going to find out when we hear from Rochelle Walensky, CDC official, later on today, who's expected to address the nation here in the United States. I do want to also say that despite the fact that perhaps we will see a quote-unquote flattening of the curve, something, at least here in the United States, that's of growing concern is the fact that U.S. cities are struggling to maintain services as the virus is sidelining crucial workforces like firefighters, sanitation workers, teachers, and other employees. And I want to go back and circle back to the situation we are with the snow here in New York City. Although we are faring well right now, we have the COVID situation on the one hand, but then this heavy snow on the other, which is definitely going to make testing very difficult as well. Already we've heard that a lot of testing sites aren't going to be opening today, or they're going to be opening late.
Thank you, Susan. Hope you can stay warm in what is a very snowy New York City. That was Susan Tarani joining us live from New York City.